Why haven't humans returned to the moon yet? Hey guys, welcome back to another video here on High Tech 10s. In July of 1969, the United States made history by putting the first man on the moon. In December of 1972, history was made again when the United States put the last man on the moon. Since the 70s, humans haven't returned to the moon. But why? In this video, we'll be answering that question, so make sure you stay tuned in and watch right till the end. The end of the space race. The most immediate reason why we haven't returned to the moon since the early 70s is that the United States government slashed NASA's federal budget, rendering the agency unable to carry out expensive, dangerous space missions. The Apollo program alone cost, at the time, $25.8 billion. Adjusted for inflation, today the cost rises up to $260 million. After the US won the space race, the Soviet Union just stopped trying to compete, despite the early lead. After all, they put the first satellite in space, the first man in space, and sent space probes to the far side of the moon and even Venus. But by the late 1960s, the Soviet space program's visionary space engineer, Sergei Korolev, had died. Without Korolev, the Soviet government cut funding to its space program, and so the US didn't see the point of going back to the moon. At the time, there was no way to get return investment from it. In a lot of ways, the journey to the moon was seen as a money pit, despite the support for space exploration. In 2017, however, there were plans to land the first woman on the moon. However, that doesn't guarantee that we will make a return to the moon in the mid-2020s. After all, there was already a lunar return project in the 2000s called Constellation. It was cancelled by Obama in 2010 for being too expensive. If it hadn't been cancelled, we would already have sent people to the moon since it was eyeing a 2020 landing date. But despite us having the technology to go to the moon, since we did it multiple times, there's a reason why we still haven't landed on the moon yet. Lost technology. Now, we seem to have lost a lot of the technology and knowledge that we used to go to the moon in the 20th century. It sounds baffling that this is the case. NASA, in the wake of 1972 budget cut, was in a different place, and it just wasn't able to preserve everything from the program. NASA has come under some fire before for not preserving vital things, specifically the raw footage of the moon landing that was taped over. Of course, we have lots of footage of the moon landing because it was broadcast on live TV at the time. But the footage that was lost was the unprocessed, low frame rate feed that wasn't suitable for broadcast. It's not only that, though. Everything that came together to make the moon landing a reality doesn't really exist anymore. We might have the blueprints and schematics for lunar modules and rockets, but we don't have the experts who made those blueprints into a physical spacecraft capable of landing people on the nearest rock in space. Hundreds of thousands of exceptional engineers, designers, and physicists work on these lunar programs, and without these very same people, we're unable to get to the moon in the same way that we did decades ago. We don't have the building materials either, because factories producing materials for NASA shut down. There's plentiful knowledge and information that we have retained, but there is also stuff like calculations and modifications that we have failed to record and preserve. Rebuilding old rockets. Taking into account what we just mentioned, we just simply can't go ahead and build the rockets that took us to the moon in the 60s. That, however, hasn't stopped people from reconstructing the equipment, especially the enormous F1 engine present in the Saturn V rocket. Over 350 feet tall, it remained the largest and most powerful rocket ever used. In the 2010s, there were efforts to rebuild the F1 rocket, which hadn't been used since 1973, so that they could rediscover the technology and hopefully reuse it in the development of future launch systems. A group of young NASA engineers worked tirelessly to recreate the engine using materials and information that they could scrounge from archives and museums. Rediscovering this technology could help NASA save money in the future of space exploration, as the F1 engine, despite being absolutely huge, is simple enough to design. But it was still an extremely difficult task to pull off, even with a component belonging to the Saturn V, one of the most famous space launch vehicles in the world, and possibly one of the most integral to human space exploration. Now, there are also reasons why it's better that we don't use the technology recycled from Apollo. In the 21st century, there's a huge focus on sustainability and the environment. Giant, single-use rockets are bad for both of these things. Hence, we've pushed for reusable vehicles. Where reusable vehicles are concerned, SpaceX has the lead with its Falcon 9. Other space companies like Virgin and Blue Origin are working on various modules and components that will be good for multiple uses. NASA is doing the exact same thing and is reusing the reusable concepts for its Artemis. We also have better tech than before, and we're doing significantly more research into space, even without going to the moon. Simply put, with enough time, we can do everything the Apollo program did, but better. Artemis is already budgeted to be far cheaper than Apollo, with a $35 billion price tag. Artemis will also have the support of other leading space agencies, like the European Space Agency and Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency, as well as using equipment from SpaceX. So it has the backing of a tremendous amount of research and money. Even if we did still have access to Apollo's technology right now, it just wouldn't be fit for purpose anymore because we've come such a long way. Lost knowledge. We need to remember that no knowledge is truly immortal. Everything has the risk of being lost in some way, either because it gets destroyed or it's deemed to be so simple at the time that it doesn't need to be re-recorded. One good example of this is Roman concrete, which is extremely sturdy and enduring, but for years we have no idea about why the concrete is so good or why we failed at recreating it. We finally discovered the secret to its strength: seawater and volcanic ash. As we conclude today's video, we'd like to say that going to the moon is hard and it takes years of planning and funding. We just can't launch a spacecraft and head to the moon. It will take us at least a decade before we return to the lunar surface. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.